I mean, obviously, mate, if he makes a bunch of oracles and he beats Maru, I'll start loving oracles immediately after this best of 3. Here we go. Lower bracket of the winners bracket. It's a bit complicated, but it's okay. They are playing for seeding in the knockout bracket. Bottom right side of Oceanborn. It's Twisted Minds Classic.
And up here in the top left-hand side of the map, the blue Terran player, one of the most winningest players in all of the GSL. He is on sides Maru. Ay. Well, I know we were talking a little bit about Classics openings and the Oracle versus Phoenix and stuff, but how have you been feeling about kind of the Terran side of things, Kev? Break it down for me.
Well, it's hard, right? Because I feel like a lot of the Terrans have different preferences. There are a lot of Terrans who are quite fond of some of these timings that you can do with just a couple of Marines early, a couple Cyclones, maybe a Viking and a Medevac, and just go to the other side of the map. Because Protoss players more and more are like, yeah, those 4-minute third bases are kind of nice, 410, 420. But what if we just take it at like 335? And that's pretty good against most Reaper openings. But if they go like Marine first or even Marine into Reactor, like it actually becomes so difficult to deal with the first push. And if you're putting all your eggs in that basket of like, I want to be the 3-base Protoss, but then you can't be the 3-base Protoss, obviously the rest of whatever you try to do is going to be severely delayed and you don't have that great economy to back it up. So I'm just kind of curious to see how Maru is going to approach this series. I saw Classic there for a split second. I believe we had a Sentry on the production tab. Did he let it finish? I highly doubt that was the case, right?
No,
he's like Sentry, he's like, nope, snap, cancel. Let's go ahead and get an Adept instead. And Maru is opening up with the Reaper. We do see a Reactor though. I don't believe that factory was that close to the... No. So I don't think we'll see a swapper here. It could just be Marines getting reacted out. Like 1 or 2 Cyclones and we'll take it from there for Maru.
Yeah, well, almost one of the more old school kind of openings, of course, with the addition of that Cyclone. A Reaper tries to hop up, sees the full wall there. That's pretty typical for Protoss players in the Adept. Going to be able to try and chase down the Reaper, but of course, you can't actually kill it. And even just being able to buy a little bit of time, it slows the Adept also down from getting its scouting information off, because, yeah, if you're not going to have a Sentry or something early on, then you kind of need the Adept to get across the map and see what you're up against.
Yeah, I do find it weird that Classic fired up that Sentry for a split second and canceled it, goes Adept first, which obviously makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
You can go Sentry first if you're convinced that your opponent doesn't go Reaper first. Losing a probe here would already be kind of annoying. Somehow saves the probe. I mean, great or bad force field, but in the end he loses one, loses the second one too. And these are the moments where you wish you would have kept that Adept at home a little bit longer. Good news though is that I guess Maru's Reaper didn't see everything, but actually, he did see the robot.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I guess he did kind of see everything.
I feel like that was a really great demonstration of your point, Roddy, of why a Sentry is not great against the Reaper.
Yeah, and obviously this wasn't even Sentry first. It
No, it
was
wasn't.
Sentry after the Adept, but we used the Adept to scout. Classic going for the Robo build that we saw Australia go for as well. Out of the 3 openings that Protoss players can go for if you don't take into consideration the weird 1-base all-ins or the proxy gate where it's like Twilight Star get a Robo. Personally, I have been always the least fond of the Robo because as a Protoss, you're basically just saying, all right, I'm going to sit back, I'm going to defend here, and I'll see what you do, but I believe that I'm going to be fine. But it just takes forever as a Protoss player to get any sort of map presence, other than observers, obviously, but they don't fight back, or to get any way to slow the Terran down. So the only thing you can do is defend to perfection. But even if you do that, it's like, okay, now we have a normal game. But if you don't do it, the game is over immediately, which is why I don't really love the Robo first.
Yeah, it kind of puts a lot of pressure on yourself to say, like, I really hope that they're coming to attack me with this big committed 2-base attack. And we do see a little bit of pressure here with the Medevac, and we see as we aim high over there in those players' own cameras that they are trying to micro against each other. We got the Medevac micro happening. A couple of Stalkers, I think, getting a little bit lower in energy, but really, really forward shield battery positioning there from Classic as well.
What is always very cool about watching Maru's first-person view is that obviously he's a very fast player, but what I love the most is how accurate he is. It feels that he rarely misclicks. Almost every single thing seems kind of effortless on his side, and he does so many little things right. The tiny positioning of the Cyclone, of the Widowmine, of the Marines going back and forth. Not blazingly fast, but incredibly accurate.
Oh, absolutely. We do see a pylon going down. That's going to depower one of the very few warp gates that are out there right now. Liberator gets really low on hit points. It's actually a very nice snag there for Classic. Even if he doesn't kill it, it's a lot easier to engage in that position. And Ooh, Stalker's actually going to start going across the map to find reinforcements.
Dropping a Mew as well, so we're going to repair the Liberator, we're going to repair the Cyclone on this side of the map, and overall I absolutely hate where this is going for Classic, by the way. I know he's got a couple of Stalkers running to the other side of the map, but there's not one but two tanks here, and these Stalkers don't have Blink. Even if they did, you can't do a whole lot, but without Blink you can absolutely not do anything here. And like now I'm looking at this base, I'm looking at this game, Ravi, sorry, not this base, also the base, but 6 minutes in, we're 2 base Protoss without a Twilight Council. Robotics Bay is done, but we don't have Disruptor or Colossus yet. We don't have a third base. Like, what's happening here? Like,
he's not even warping more units because he doesn't have a Cyber Core since he lost it. He can only warp in slow Zealots, I guess, but he opts to just try and go for the break. He is going to be able to muster a break, and he recalls some of the units to deal with the medevac that just went over to the main base. That is going to be enough to deter the medevac, but not fast enough to actually kill it off.
Well, we're looking at a triple command center Maru on the other side of the map with multiple tanks, with a Raven, an interference matrix. Now Classic warps in a Stargate, by the way. In 6 minutes and 20 seconds, we suddenly have a Stargate go down. This honestly is a very bizarre game coming out of Classic. Like, you look at this Protoss army, and this is so innocent, right? They don't do anything. They don't mean any harm. They can't blink. They can't charge. They don't have any forge upgrades. Like, what looks good here for Classic? I guess the fact that we have 2 Immortals. What if we just rally some Immortals into the natural and we mess up some tanks, Ravi?
Yeah, I mean, this is not one of those games where you look at the builder and you're like, all right, so strategically, if you're in this situation, you lose this set of units, and then you're in this position where your opponent's gone for the triple CC, you just attack with 2 Immortals and a handful of Stalkers across. Like, this isn't something that Classic is ever planning on. So I think even he's trying to figure out what he's supposed to do as he kind of moves into the middle of the map, but not even far enough to really threaten, pulls back and says, I guess I just defend a third base at home and see what I can do.
Yeah, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but it just looks so grim for Classic. Like, it feels like a game where not too much happened other than Maru going for a relatively basic push, but Classic clearly could not deal with that push easily. So he's contained, he's stuck on 2 bases, his stack is being delayed. Now we built a very random Stargate, so I guess we're still kind of heading into Phoenix Colossus, but in a very odd way, where our Phoenix guy is going to be low for a long time. At least we can put this Phoenix on top of the medevac. And Maru is going to be so shocked when he's like, wait, that thing is real? It actually deals damage? Like, that's not a hallucinated Phoenix? This doesn't make any sense, mate. You opened Robo. And Classic is like, yeah, I know. So that's obviously nice about the whole Stargate investment. But the Phoenixes come in so late that it's going to be really hard for them to have a major impact in the next few minutes of this game, where you would normally want your Phoenix to be very dominant.
Yeah, and in those normal kind of situations where you are going for those Phoenix Colossus openings, you were talking about this at the very beginning of the game, the third base timing is so important. The third base timing is going to be so much later relative. So it's a slower Phoenix count building. The third base in the economy is not quite going to be quite there, but given enough time, Classic will end up at a kind of more normal game composition. Yeah. It's just, is Maru going to give him that time?
I mean, I guess there are definitely some fights where I can see Classic do very well. If Maru goes a little bit earlier than he should and he gets swallowed up by a couple Zealous, and then the Phoenixes show up with any Impulse Crystals, that I love. If the Phoenix can snipe a Raven, I think surviving the first big push is not impossible for Classic, but it's definitely going to be very hard. And right now, like, it's so many resources going into infrastructure. That Fleet Beacon is really expensive. The 2 Stargates are expensive. None of that is really coming into play here. You just need to buy so much time with these Sentries and the Colossus. We know Classic is capable of it, but it's looking very grim at the moment.
Yeah, Maru is spreading out his units. He's got those Ravens available. Interference Matrix also should be ready and available, but Charge is getting close to finishing up. +1 weapons for Classic also getting close to finishing up. If he can buy a little bit more time, he will be able to capitalize on those upgrades. That's, I mean, something to soften up the tanks, but not actually going to kill anything. So far, Disruptor not paying for itself just yet. We have Force Fields actually locking in quite a few of these Marines and Marauders, and Shield Battery also keeping a lot of these units alive. So not the worst start here for Classic so far. It's
going to be real scary soon, because we're going to have a bunch of Interference Matrixes, and I think that's when Maru is just going to stim forward, especially if he sees Tempest showing up. He's like, what? Tempest, I think at this moment you can just drop a couple of Matrixes on the Colossus and stim forward and go for it. I think that would make the perfect sense. That is exactly what Maru is going to do, because now the rest of this Protoss army is simply not that great. The Zealots are going to get obliterated. The Tempest are falling. Classic is able to at least keep the Colossus alive, but that's the only thing that he's keeping alive so far.
It is really, really brutal, but he is also keeping the base alive so far for the moment. But as I say that, the 4th base location is immediately going to be found and already put under some pressure. I feel like this is do or die time here for Classic. It's not going to get any better than some of the units of Maru attacking the 4th base instead of actually going in over here. But even he knows that's still not enough army to actually take this on.
No, we need some more Zealots, but yeah, he just warped in some Stalkers to protect the Colossus. We do have that second overcharge kicking in, and that means that we have time for a few more Tempests to show up. In a world where Maru doesn't kill this Nexus, I don't think Maru is in trouble at all. And Maru does obviously need to be careful because this army is a little bit low on HP, right? And the Colossus are very scary if he would decide to stim forward one more time. We have one medevac that's putting in serious overtime here. Maru does really want this Nexus. He's going to go for it with a couple of Marauders, and that is good enough as that shield battery was unpowered. Now in return, though, Classic does get on top of the tanks, but I think he needs a bit more than just the tanks he's getting here.
Yeah, I do feel like at this point, Classic effectively has one final hurrah available. That's maybe, you can't even really wait for the carriers, right? You've lost 2 of your bases. You're at even army supply right now. Is it just box everything and go after like 1 round of warp-ins? I don't know if that would work though.
Yeah, I don't think it would work. I don't think Classic thinks it's going to work either. I'm sure that the thought crossed his mind, where he's like, well, I mean, a bunch of low HP bio. I have triple Colossus. Maybe, but then the more you think about it, it's like, nah, there's just no universe where he's not going to have enough to wipe out his army. And if I lose this army, then I'm completely screwed in this game because I just don't have time to rebuild it all. So he's going to go back. I think maybe like a bit of the PVZ pressure where I was like, hey, Zerg, you should build units. I'm moving out. But then actually going home and then just hoping that he can get Nexus number 3 and 4 back up and running. I got to say, early today, Classic did display some great control of the late game Protoss army against Clem on El Sione. And I'm sure that he's dreaming of just hopefully being able to play a game like that. But these Stalkers, for instance, still don't have Blink. And one of the main reasons why he was able to do that well in that game is because his forwards Blink were excellent, right? Just putting a bit of pressure on the Vikings, one-shotting, two-shotting Vikings a couple of times over and over again. Made it harder for Clem to get the dream fights. If you don't have Blink on your Stalkers, they just kind of stand there and yeah, you hope that they shoot at Vikings, but there is no guarantee that they will ever be in range.
No, absolutely. You need the tools available to make those kind of fights happen that Classic was making happen earlier in the day. And he's getting closer to some of those. He doesn't have Blink, but at least he has Storm on the way. His carry count is growing, but I think he still needs to be able to buy some more time because Maru has just hit the max out point. And there's not really a whole lot stopping Maru from at least posturing himself on the map to try and actually shut down any potential bases you're.
You know what I would love here? No longer Interference Matrix. This is where you drop an anti-armor missile. Because with the way that Classic is playing, he doesn't get any armor upgrades. And we're about to witness +2 Marauders, +2 Marines. There's a couple of them are just YOLO stimming into the natural. Why the hell not? Classic's army is very immobile. Colossus not that quick. Carriers are not quick at all. The Robo's gonna get picked off. And don't forget about this monstrous army. I want to see an anti-armor missile, and obviously Maru's gonna give us what we need. That means that he's gonna be 4 upgrades ahead soon with that anti-armor missile and the +2. I mean, this Protoss army is now made out of glass.
Yeah, he has effectively broken the game and figured out how to research +4 weapons, and it is really, really scary as you see even just a handful of bio units able to make this Protoss army evaporate. There aren't actually that many bio units on the ground anymore, but it doesn't matter because now the Colossus, the Carriers, the Tempest are all falling prey to the Vikings. The Zealots come in to reinforce, but I mean, to what end? All of the air army that Classic cannot replenish has died for the most part.
Yeah, because Maru split off some bio into the natural, he definitely struggled here a little bit. I almost feel if he would have just fought with the Vikings and he wouldn't have fought with the bio, he would have done better. But he lost a lot of bio units very quickly. The Carriers go very far out right now. The Viking count not all that high anymore. If Classic can clean all of this up while keeping the Carriers alive, which he does, it's like, okay, we're still allowed to dream because he does have +2 air weapons at this point.
And he kept the base alive as well.
Yeah, but it's still obviously looking very bad since Maru is way rich. He's going up to 5 bases, has a 21 worker lead, has way better upgrades, and he's working with triple starport, so he's building 6 Vikings at a time. I think Classic did about as good there as he could, but it's nowhere near enough.
Yeah, if that was a kind of trade that happened when the game was relatively even, then I would actually be feeling great about Classic's chances in this. But because he was already playing from behind, it just begs the question, was it really enough? And it feels like Maru is still kind of knocking on his door. He's already closing in on maxed out supply, yet again at 172 supply, making all those Vikings you were talking about, which frankly, that mothership is not going to be coming out into the most beautiful scenario to actually find the biggest value.
No, that mothership is going to come out and it's going to try to crawl back into the Nexus. Be like, I don't want to be a part of this, mate.
Yeah, that is a gruesome image for a mothership, but we'll see what he can make happen with it. He is at least able to buy himself a little bit of time for a little while until Maru gets situated, but look at that ghost count, Kev.
I was about to say, like, he's warping in so many Stalkers. Did I completely miss him get Blink? But he still doesn't have Blink. He's going to fire it up now. Impressive that we're able to land the Storming as the 8 ghosts that Maru has. And I got to say, these Storms have been very good. The only problem is the Interceptor count, Ravi. The Interceptor count is incredibly low. That means that Marines can just stand here and fight. Vikings can just do their thing. And it's good old on-site gaming. Maru takes the 1-0 lead. And honestly, he looked in control from start to finish. Classic makes life so hard on himself in these PvTs in his openings. I feel like if he goes for a standard Twilight Blink opening or a standard Phoenix opening, like he did in Game 2 against Clem, the game that he won, by the way, where it's like, mate, you do so good when you're in so much trouble. Can we try to be like in a bit less trouble entering minute 4 or 5? And let's see how well he does then, because he plays very well from almost impossible positions, but yeah, they are impossible for a reason.
Genuinely impressive that Classic in this game held on and was taking such incredible engagements in a basically effectively a race where he says, Maru, go ahead and start 10 seconds before me. And then he somehow manages to actually make it look a little bit closer by the end. And exactly what you're saying. If you're able to get into these kind of fights and somehow, you know, even despite ignoring the anti-armor missile on this one, but you were talking about this, like little things like this seemed like a fight that he shouldn't have been able to win. Classic shouldn't have. And he still made this look surprisingly good and close. Imagine if he was doing that from an even situation.
Yep. No, a couple of good fights. There's obviously maybe to play devil's advocate. It's like, well, but if Maru knew how close the game was, he'd be a lot more careful. Yeah, that's true. Perhaps that is true. But Classic does this stuff quite often. We saw him do it against Clem. We see him do it against Maru. We've seen him do it in different tournaments. It's just the openings are really holding him back. Like, there is a reason why guys like Hero and MaxPax and Creator in general say, like, all right, either I open Phoenix or I open up with Blink Stalkers. And how you want to play your Blink, that's completely up to you, right? You can go 2-gateway Blink, go up to 3 bases. If you feel like that's too risky, you can go for the 3-gate Blink and go up to 3 bases. If you say, like, nope, I want to be a bit more in the face of the Terran, you can go 4-gate Blink Stalker and drop a much later 3rd Nexus. This is like this Robo First. I saw Australia try it earlier today as well. I just don't really believe. I think Robo First is great if you're way better than your opponent, right? Where you say, like, all right, coming at me because you need to kill me soon. But yeah, nobody's really way better than that Terran that's on the other side of the screen of Classic. So don't know about that. Let's see if we can turn things around here. Game 2, El Sayoni. We are playing for deeper seeding into the knockout bracket. Bottom left side, Twisted Minds, Classic.
And up here in the top right-hand side of the map, the blue Terran player from Onside Gaming, he is Maru.
Maru having a bit of a tough time today in the TVTs. He did beat Kalazur, but 2-1. I think a lot of people would have predicted a 2-0 there. And then obviously ended up losing in that very important upper bracket semifinal match against Cure, because the winner of that series gets seeded into the top 8 of the tournament immediately. While if you lose in that round, then you have to play this lower bracket, then you play the knockout bracket, and then you have to duke it out with amazing players that make it through those open brackets, where I believe A and B are pretty much done. And so far, those guys are Creator, Hero, Lambo, Ragnarok. I mean, those are 4 very scary players that can make a serious run, even potentially into playoffs someday.
No, absolutely. I mean, they're all actually, for the most part, players as well that have experienced the playoffs before. So I would not put it past any of them to try and make a deeper run. And they're players you don't want to just face because you accidentally didn't do so well in some of the earlier series in the tournament. So I think Maru's probably got to be feeling a bit of that pressure. And you know what? I have to imagine as well, I know I talked with so many fans already today who have basically been saying, yeah, it's time for Maru to win one of these other events, like in a foreign land outside of Korea. And I feel like a lot of people, Maru's got to be feeling the same, man. He's got to be feeling. I don't want to say so much pressure because Maru's so experienced, as we even have on the player cards show. But he's got to be thinking in the back of his mind, like, God, I need to be able to just kill it at one of these events.
Yeah, he's had opportunities over the years, and obviously he did win the WSG once upon a time. That was a big one, but it was over in China, right? So people are waiting for him to lift the trophy either in America or in Europe. We know he has the skills, but I think Maru is also very realistic, and I think he's a very confident individual, but he will look around and be like, yeah, I cannot just promise or guarantee that I'm going to win a tournament when I've got to worry about Solar, Cure, Dark, Serral, Reynor, Bjorn, and then the laundry list of other very good players that are in this tournament. Even if you're Maru, we can't just expect someone like Maru to show up and be like, yeah, Maru, you're going to win in Atlanta, right? Like, no. The field is way too tough, even for a player like Maru, to guarantee a win or even a finals appearance.
No, absolutely. Now, I do quickly want to talk, as we have the Adept, just doing its regular scouting, sees the Cyclone, and of course the Reaper trying to do its regular scouting. But interesting position from Classic on that pylon on the low ground. He also has the Stargate coming in behind his natural. The Reaper did manage to scout that out, but kind of unusual placement, I feel like, for that low ground pylon, especially if you're thinking about like shield batteries and stuff later on.
He did it earlier today as well. I asked Bio about it too. I was like, what do you think? And Bio was like, I don't know, maybe he's trying to hide it. And I was like, yeah, I'm a bit confused about it too. I really don't love it all that much. What I do like is that it seems like it's going to be a bit more normal. It's just the Stargate. We are not using the Stargate yet.
Phoenix!
Very quick robo. Yeah, and he's like, you know what? Let's go with that opening that I did win with, where I just started building Phoenix immediately. And I know it's a bit of a cliche for some people. They're like, oh, buddy loves Phoenix. What a surprise. But it's like, no, the nerds perform better. And you can ask world-class Terran players. They will also tell you that playing against Phoenix from the get-go is a lot more annoying than when it's Oracle into Phoenix, because the Oracle makes the Phoenix count lower, which makes the Phoenix weaker.
Yeah, and the Phoenix are also just so good against so many of the different kind of Terran openings and stuff. It really does cover your bases. It's nice to do little things like this where picking off the Reaper shuts down a little bit map vision, but even if there's like a Widow Mine drop, if there's any of these siege tank pushes, whatever, it can be really effective. But this is an interesting one.
Yeah, look at the SCV tab. We see one SCV, two SCVs, one SCV. Is that because Maru is sleepy? No, guys. That's because Maru is cutting a couple of corners, and he just wants to get to the other side of the map as quickly as possible. He's even going to bring a couple of SCVs, and this kind of stuff is very difficult to defend. You need perfect micro as the product. You need to start kiting early. The target fire of the Immortal needs to be on point. Ideally, you should have the Cyclone. Very nice to be on the high ground here already. Maru's probably like, wait, what the hell? I've got SCV production. You're supposed to be very scared. Why are you standing on top of the ramp of the third base? You're not even supposed to be here. So far, so good for Classic, but he's going to have to pull off a few more good moves.
Yeah, really helpful that he was able to scout the SCVs, especially pulled with this army with that Adept and get in position over here. The shield battery is even going to be able to finish up in time to help out a little bit. Now remember, it's going to finish up without a Nexus, so it's a little bit lower on energy.
Yep, lower on energy and no overcharge. And
yes.
That is a very big deal. There is a flanking Immortal coming in from the left. Maru is on siege. Classic is just going to go for it. And hey, that one Phoenix is actually putting in some serious value as we lift the tank. And Maru is forced to go home without really getting a whole lot done. The only thing he really got done so far is a delay on the third Nexus. I mean, Classic is just looking so much better in this game.
It's incredible the power of the Phoenix, Kev, but I mean, even besides that, it's just the fact that, yes, the third base is delayed, but Classic didn't slow down his tech. He already had a Colossus being fired up during that fight, and you can already see it's going to be finishing up soon. He's going to be on his way to get up that ideal composition of having both the Phoenix out that you were talking about he gets started on early and the Colossus out that is making things so much more complicated for Maru.
Yeah, and big kudos to Classic, man, for having the confidence to stand on top of that ramp of the third base, even though he doesn't even have a third base yet, because that made it easier. Then he gets a full volley of shots off as he does end up losing one of the Phoenixes against the Cyclones. He's going up to 4 bases at minute 6, and Oceanborn he was at 2 bases at minute 6, which kind of says it all how Classic feels about this game. Obviously, losing that Phoenix was a bit painful, but yeah, standing here, even though you don't have a Nexus, makes your life easier because you've got high ground. Maru, his flying units were trailing the Marines a little bit, so Stalkers and Immortals just get one shot off, a second set of shots off, and that scares Maru a little bit, forces Maru to siege up way further back. And then at one point, Maru is also like, okay, what am I doing here? I'm standing in no man's land, right? I'm not putting pressure on a Robo. I'm not putting pressure on a Nexus or getting in range of probes. Like, I'm standing at the bottom of a ramp of a base where there is no base yet. So
ready to attack a shield battery with half its energy. Yeah.
That's not where you want to be. So then Maru has to go home, but the moment he goes home, Classic is there immediately to punish him for it. Lovely start here by Classic. Very impressive.
No, absolutely. Now, I'm really curious, Kev, as the Phoenix Master, of course, I have to ask you, some of the Phoenix already going down, we have Blue State Phoenix or whatever scouting around, but there's really only one or maybe two Phoenix out on the map. Is this a point where you actually ever think about replenishing that Phoenix count?
Well, there are Protoss players who do it, and a lot of Protoss players will say like, nah, not really needed. Right now, it's a lot more about the ground army, especially if you go for the explosion, the gateway, as Letot would say. With all these gates coming online, +1 charge, you can just attack, right, with Zealots, Archons, Immortals, a couple of Colossus that you already have, and it's still so nice. Even if you have a single Phoenix, Ravi, that single Phoenix is amazing, because now Maru can grab a Raven, put it behind your main base, and drop other turrets all game long. Cannot have a matter of fact there with 2 Widow Mines inside of it. No, a single Phoenix still represents a lot of strength, even if it's not so much in the straight-up fight. So I'm completely okay with Classic now focusing on the ground, because he has already gotten himself in a good spot, and that's what we wanted to see from him.
Yeah, continuing to carry on into the later stage of the game where he can show off how gosh darn good he is in these later stages if he gets off to a good start. Small little things also I want to just compliment Classic on is I love the idea of just leaving the Adept at the Xel'Naga Watchtower, and as Maru approaches, he pulls back the Adept, sends a Shade out, which contests the Xel'Naga Watchtower, so he's invulnerable, and then he sends the rest of his army forward where Maru can't see it.
Look at this, by the way, Ravi. Very quick fusion core, very quick.
Ooh.
Triple starport. But I have the feeling, I mean, Liberators are great, guys, don't get me wrong, but I almost have the feeling that, is this a mystery by Maru? Does he just expect Classic once more to go double Stargate, Fleet Beacon, couple of Phoenix, even though most of the time he doesn't get any Impulse Crystal, but to go straight into those carriers? Because, yeah, sure, Liberators are great, but normally as a Terran, you don't see them go into triple starport Lib this early. Then again, it is Maru. Maybe Maru just knows that playing it out in any different other way, as he doesn't even have combat shield yet, I believe. Did I just see that?
No.
Oh, no.
No, he does.
Okay, I saw something else pop up on the production tab. Yeah, Maru just knows that there is a good chance the Classic is going to A-move him with a whole bunch of Zealots and Archons, and he's just like, well, bio units won't cut it here. Tanks won't have enough protection. I need Liberators, and I need them now, and yeah, why not get 6 at a time?
Yeah, and this Sim City is unreal. That's actually unbelievable. Do you even still attack into that as Classic, or do you just kind of say, I have bases to take on the map, like I'm doing fine?
We've got a battle cruiser on the way as well. That's crazy.
Is Maru reverting back to the old school Maru that just says, well, I'm kind of behind a little bit. Maybe I just turtle up and see what happens.
If he was on 4 bases, I believe, but 3 bases is going to be hard. It's the speedy War Prism that is going to drop a couple of Zealots in the back of the Natural, which will also allow Classic to pick up on that Fusion Core. And here come the Zealots. Well, you ask me, should he even attack into this? Most of the time I say no, but then I see Zealots get on top of tanks and SCVs, and I'm like, well, the heart said no, but the brain says yes. And I guess so far it's kind of okay, but it's not fantastic yet.
Yeah, it's a weird situation that reminds me of Terran versus Zerg, where it's like you knock down the wall, if you can do something again before the wall is repaired, maybe, but half of that wall was also a command center that just lifted off, and I don't know if you want to continue taking those kind of trades, right?
Yeah, like if you're like 6-7 bases and you're like ultra mega rich and 90 probes, I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. I mean, Classic is gonna take the gold soon.
Yeah.
I guess he just wants to keep on trying. He really believes in his Zealots, and he does have a double upgrade lead, so that's obviously pretty big. First bunker dies, second bunker dies. BCs are gonna be forced to participate in this fight already. And I guess the BCs will be very useful because Classic doesn't have that much anti-air yet. Does warp in a full set of Stalkers. How many tanks are remaining? Not all that many, so that means that the Vikings are forced to land as well. Vikings on the ground are not bad at all against Stalkers. It's mostly the Zealots here, Ravi, that are making this an okay attack in the end because of all the economic damage.
Yeah, but I also want to note that the Vikings, not only did they pick off the Warp Prism, they also picked up a couple of the Colossus and just generally were able to go ham because everything else is just attacking into the bunkers and the supply depots and the siege tanks. So Classic ended up losing a lot of very costly, expensive units there. He kind of has to make something happen now.
And I think he will, mate, because these BCs are very low in HP, and just like that, it is Classic who ties things up here in the lower bracket of the championship winners stage here at the ESL Winter Championships. Well done by Classic. I think a very solid game. Also love how in the beginning of the game, like, yes, he went Stargate, yes, he went Phoenix, but he very quickly realized that, okay, I don't need 3 or 4 or 5 Phoenix here. What I need is a couple of ground units, and I need that ASAP, that Big Daddy Immortal ASAP. Then he made the second Immortal as well, and only after that he made 1 or 2 extra. Phoenixes. I really love the way that he played it. And Maru was probably wondering, like, mate, what the hell? Like, what were you doing at the top of that third base ramp when you didn't even have that Nexus yet? But that was just brilliant army positioning by Classic.
Yeah, even this attack in, I looked at it, and I think even you were looking at it, and you're like, is it the right decision to attack into a Terran player that's that fortified up? I feel like a lot of people would look at that and say, well, surely you just chill back and expand, but even the fact that Classic was able to turn that into a big old W off of the economy you already had was really impressively done.
Yeah, Zealots can be very good if they just get on top of tanks, SCVs, bunkers. You know, the Terran army will do some splash damage. Maru didn't invest anymore at all in bio upgrades, so Classic had a nice upgrade lead. And even though that may have looked a little bit reckless, we've also seen too many games where people let Maru live just a little longer than he was supposed to live. And it's like, yeah, but hey, Maru is still kind of dead in this game, right? Like, Maru's only on 3 bases, and then eventually like, well, Maru's on 4 bases, but he's still so far behind. And then he wins a fight. It's like, Maru's on 5 bases. Now he's kind of back into the game. And so I don't mind that Classic got a bit reckless there, because if you can get Maru out of the game, just go ahead and try to finish it ASAP.
No, I actually totally agree. I think Maru is just one of those players that sometimes you think, I'm not playing versus Maru, I'm playing versus Terran, and you kind of think of it that way. I feel like that's one of the situations like, no, I'm playing versus Maru. I need to keep in mind what he's really good at right now.
Yep. Then maybe it's against some other Terrans, Classic would have looked in and been like, okay, you know, I'll just get a couple of observers, have complete map control, I'll get my Tempest out, and I'll take 6, 7 bases, and I'll just make sure that you can never get up to 4 bases. But against Maru, I don't mind it. He was like, no, we're just going to send it, and I hope it's good enough, and it was good enough.
Yeah, I believe Maru was just using the restroom really quickly, but great to see so many of those beautiful faces out there in the crowd. I know a handful of you guys are cheering for Maru. I know some of you guys are cheering for Classic as well, and I know I'm excited to get into this game number 3, but Kev, I've got to say, this is just not a situation I expected to find ourselves in. You know, 4 or 5 hours into day number 1 of this event, Maru already having lost 1 series and now potentially going to be losing a 2nd series here if Classic is able to, frankly, repeat what happened in game number 2, where he just gets a normal, solid-ish opening and turns it into a W.
Yeah, or he just dies to Cyclones in game 3.
Yeah.
Let's not go too far yet with this storyline. But no, it's not been the hardest day for Maru. Maru will be the first to admit it, where he's like, okay, he won against Kalazur, but he dropped the map, lost the Cure, and now finds himself in a tiny bit of trouble against Classic. Good news, though, for Maru and all the diehard Maru fans out there, is that even if Maru loses here, he's not out of the tournament at all. He just has to start a little bit earlier in the knockout bracket, which honestly may be way worse news for everyone in that knockout bracket than it is for Maru.
Oh yeah, imagine the absolute treat where you just find out like, oh, I guess I get to play one of the potential favorites to win the tournament. Cool, get to play him nice and early on in the knockout bracket. Not a fun thought, but oh man, it's gonna be fun to see how this one pans on out. I still just feel like that Classic has been able to showcase that, yes, game number 1, he fell behind, but he still, like we were talking about before, made it look close. And it's the fact that plus game number 2, at the beginning of the series, I was kind of favoring Maru a little bit. I'm starting to lean a little more Classic sided now.
I'll make my decision 3.5 minutes into the game. I want to see how he opens up. If I see a Robo, I'm picking Maru. If I see an Oracle, I'm picking Maru. No, we'll see. Seems like we had a tiny break as one of the players needed a second. Obviously, it's been a long day for a lot of the nerds already. Some of them still had some media obligations in the very early morning. So they've been here for a couple of hours. Obviously, players that knew they were going to play in either the winner's stage, bracket 2, Group B, obviously fun group with Serral, Cyan, Beyond, Raynor, Dark Spirit, Oliveira, and Solar. I think Oliveira Solar, by the way, that's a real match that stands out for me. There's a lot of Chinese fans in the building as well. They already told me, like, man, when I watched I Am Katowice, I cried. Roddy, I cried for a week straight. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I was like, mate, I know. That was such an amazing moment in the history of StarCraft 2. So Oliveira versus Solar, I think an absolute banger.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are probably going to be sleeping on that one. Don't recognize how much fun that series can really be. But ladies and gentlemen, I think that game number 3 of this series is also going to be a lot of fun. And I believe that our next map is finally loaded on up. We're heading into Solaris up here in the top right-hand side of the map. Our red Protoss player from Twisted Minds, he is Classic.
In the bottom left side of Solaris, we are looking at the main base of the man who's been absolutely smashing it for on-site gaming in the WTL, Codes. He's the best performing player in the league. This is Maru. Those on-site hoodies are very cool, by the way.
They are.
And we had a Basilisk signing session earlier. Unfortunately, Rainer couldn't be there because Rainer was still a bit sick. But we had a lot of fun. Sarah on my right, Trigger on my left, and a lot of lovely nerds stopped by, a little chitty chat. You know, everyone just happy. StarCraft is back here in Atlanta. And then eventually we had a couple of nerds who were like, hey, Roddy, can you ask the guys if we can take a picture? But they were wearing on-site gaming hoodies. I was like, you're the enemy, mate. But I was laughing. I was joking, obviously. I was like, of course, mate. You go ahead and come in. And then, honestly, they look very cool.
I'm not gonna lie, I feel like jerseys in general in esports, and even especially in StarCraft, have really come a long way, and I'm really grateful now. We have all these extra teams and stuff coming on in, and of course Engineering Bay Block happening over here. Classic doing his best to try and award away that SCV, but I feel like we have a diversity of colors now. There's a lot of like very trendy looking stuff. I know Team Liquid has a style, Onside has a style, Basilisk, I know you guys have a particular style and everything. It's so nice to have some good apparel options with esports stuff.
Yep. Yeah, the on-site stuff is very cool, and especially when Maru is wearing it, obviously. But I think Maru can make pretty much everything look cool.
You know, yeah, you're just a stone face killer or a stone killer. Stone face killer. What's that phrase?
Yeah.
Stone face killer.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, I'm just having that weird thing.
Yeah, when you say
like,
too many
I've
times, you're like,
it's not a word anymore. Yeah, but he absolutely makes it all work out.
I mean, it can be a faced stone killer, right?
Stone face killer.
So it has to be that well.
It's like, have I been awake for too long also? Didn't even have the media obligations, but yeah, it's going to be a pretty normal opening so far. But Kev, like you were saying, we're looking out for what those first units are.
That's most likely going to be a Cyclone setup, because this time around that factory is so close to the barracks, and if the factory is that close to the barracks, most of the time they want to do the good old swapperoo, and then we're going to rally a couple of Cyclones to the other side of the map. If Classic decides to drop a Stargate and he goes for an Oracle, that doesn't mean he doesn't. It's a Twilight Council. Okay, I kind of like the Twilight Council. Now, against Cyclones, though, there are still many scenarios where I would say, guys, just get a battery. This is what I always loved about Zest. Zest was never about like, oh, what's the most like 284 IQ suboptimal build that I have 3 extra minerals at minute 6. No, Zest was just like, oh, danger, I build a battery. And it's like, more danger, I build a battery in my main base as well. And he would just survive, hang in there, and take it. This is what I always loved about the Giga chat that Zest was.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yes, like sometimes, guys, like you know that these units are dangerous. The Cyclones are so gnarly. Even if you have a build that should be fine against it, don't make life too difficult. Just get a battery. And I'm very happy to see that Classic is getting a battery here.
Yeah, he is getting battery. It's a pretty far back battery, so feeling a little bit weirder about that part and how the pylon is just basically the very, very far forward unit there. But, you know, with some good control and everything, Classic is definitely going to have the tools he needs available to push back the extra Cyclones that pop on out earlier on. But Blink is on the way. We have the Blink upgrade that we saw Classic way earlier on in the day. Really, really able to make incredible use out of, I feel like. I think Classic really showcased some of the best Blink play we've seen from today.
Yeah, and that was actually a moment where the Blink Stalkers are not supposed to be that great, because the Marauders had Stim, had Medevac support, had 1-1, and I was like, oh man, with all these forward Blinks, it's just a matter of time before you lose all of them. But he never did. But now we're going to open up with the Blinky boys, and that obviously means that we can actually make some stuff happen on the other side of the map as well. So we've got 2 gateways finishing up, unless I missed one, so it's just a 3-gate Robo Twilight. Is that what it is, right? 3 gateways in total. I guess that is what it's going to be.
Yep. Morphin, yeah, 3 gateways total with a Robo on the way.
So you can be aggressive with this. You don't have to be, but you can be. But it can also just be like, I just want to make sure I have that tiny bit of extra production. So if I'm going up to 3 bases very early, I at least can warp in 3 units at a time rather than 2 units at a time, which sometimes can be a bit dicey. Maru, on the other end, despite the fact that he opened up with the Cyclones, very quickly decided, like, nah, what I need here is a quick triple CC setup. And against that opening, I honestly would not have hated Classic to at least try, right? Let's go to the other side of the map. Let's be in the face of Maru, and let's see if the Blink Stalkers can get something done.
All right, Marine's going to poke on forward. It sees a couple of these Stalkers, maybe at the front lines, not really catching too much. And I'm sure you would have loved to have seen, oh, War Prism making its way on out, or something to really indicate a little bit more of what Classic's going to be up to. Because Classic is keeping most of his Stalkers up in his main base. Is that, like, protection against drop, or is he really hiding the Stalkers?
No, I think he's over-respecting Maru, where he's like, all right, Maru had Cyclones, he's going to attack me. He's like, wait, I didn't get attacked. That must mean there is some weird multi-prong happening, right? Like, he's going to hit me in the main and that at the same time. And meanwhile, Maru is just chilling on the other side of the map. We're like, I guess Triple CC was the right call. And honestly, Maru's economy is going to be very good compared to the economy of Classic. But you are supposed to find some value out of your Blink Stalkers, right? We have a Warp Prism, we got 4 Stalkers, we can one-shot Marines if Combat Shield is not done. We can one-shot these SCVs. So even though right now it looks promising for Maru, you would think that we are supposed to get something done. What we can absolutely not do, though, is lose this Warp Prism against the Cyclones.
We'll have to be careful about that. The lock-on range, not quite what it used to be, but it still can absolutely tread through that Warp Prism's shield, and he is just going to immediately get recalled. So nice for Classic to keep it alive, but he really didn't get the damage done that he was looking for. And you said this before, you are looking for something there.
He got nothing.
Yeah.
He got absolutely nothing, and obviously we are going up to 3 bases. We've got 4 gases up and running. Like, it's a very playable game for Classic, but I don't love the position that he's in because he was a little bit too middle down the road, where I'm gonna go 3-gate, but I'm still gonna expand relatively late. I'm definitely not going to attack you. He respected Maru an absolute boatload, rightfully so perhaps, but it also means that we're in a bit of trouble now, unless, even if we didn't get it done with the Prism, what if we just get it done with a couple of Force Fields, a Guardian Shield, and a Colossus?
That's a scary thought, and we have seen some pretty good engagements with just a handful of good force fields. Oh, the aggressive blink forward onto the siege tank is going to be able to snipe it off. Loses a couple stalkers in the process. Force fields lock out the Cyclones from easily moving down, but the Colossus is not actually going after the bio until now. Another force field locks in the Cyclone. The SCV is being pulled off the line, and Classic is getting some massive damage on, but can he keep his army alive?
Well, that Colossus still has that Warp Prism, right? So there's so much micro potential in this Protoss army, and Classic economically may not have been looking all that hot in this game, or upgrade-wise. What he did have was that killer instinct that we were looking for, right? Like, where are you going, Classic? Will you do something to slow Maru down? Because he went Triple CC in the end, and this was apparently what he was waiting for. Now, I do think he got a little bit fortunate because Maru's army just moved throughout the center. Maru never expected Classic's real army to show up there, because Maru's like, you just had to recall your Prism, right? So why would you be right now moving out again, but instead of with just the Prism, with your entire army? So Maru just kind of caught off guard, but great move by Classic. Loved the force fields, loved how decisive he was with that forward blink, and he's absolutely in the driver's seat now at this game. Not there yet, of course, it's still Maru. Maru can always bring it back, but I think that was the kind of damage that Classic was looking for.
Man, Classic is giving me the exact same vibes as Patience from back in the day, where the Patience blinks to just make suddenly your heart jumps, and you think, oh no, was that a good blink or a bad blink? And
you can recall.
Yeah, that Warp Prism is...
Like,
killed one Viking. No, there's a second Viking. Oh, wait, recall's
so
already
fast.
off.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's really quick. I did not think he was going to be able to
Balance Council, are you looking at Ashke?
We know that second overcharge, but the second recall is a thing as Classic snipes the medevac with 2 cloaked Widow Mines inside of it as well. I mean, yeah, even though that Warp Prism rest maybe wasn't the best, but he gets out of there with the Prism, with a couple of the units. I mean, the units lost resource tab kind of tells us the entire story of this game. Maru has lost 1,800 resources more, and even if Maru was mining a little bit more for a brief moment, like over the last 2 minutes, he hasn't been mining more because he hasn't actually landed at orbital.
Yeah, it's going to be a big deal. Now, one thing Maru does have going for him is 2-2 is getting close to finishing up, and Classic doesn't even have 1-1 just yet. They're roughly on par with each other, so basically Classic should be 1 upgrade set down for a foreseeable part of the future, but Classic isn't looking to wait around. Classic is making a lot of Archons. He's not getting up Storm. He's going for a big attack now.
Yep, and if he hits right before the Ghosts are out, obviously these Archons are going to be very tanky boys and super annoying, but the first Ghost is already on the low ground, and Ghost number 2 and 3 are about to show up, and then eventually these Archons, honestly, they stop becoming that impressive. Classic knows that maybe attacking the 2-base setup of Maru is not quite what he needs to do. Zealots can be very derpy near depots and bunkers, and we already mentioned the Colossus earlier today. They can also be derpy, so Classic decides against it. Is going to get another Robo. Honestly, this is the kind of game where I say, Classic, go full Gamers 8 Classic. Give us 4 Robos, give us 5 Robos. Even if the Disruptor is a little bit worse, I still think it's always worth to have more than just 2 Robos.
I think this is such an interesting, weird, different version of the last game too, right? Where it's Maru being very pinned back. He really cannot establish a new base right now. Classic has a superior economy, has a superior army as well, and this time Classic is not just kind of A-moving into that natural and says, no, I don't need to actually take it right now. I can just continue to expand my lead, wait for a moment where Maru moves maybe a little bit too far out, and this may be that moment because he's going to catch him from the backside where Maru is no longer protected.
Maru only has 2 Widow Mines, by the way. That's, I think, very scary. That blink was perhaps not great, but the Archons are very well split out. The Colossus are going to do their thing. That bunker will melt, and Maru is obviously in all sorts of trouble as that War Prism is sitting pretty in the back. In the end, the Colossus do die, but the Zealots are really what is turning this into a successful attack for Classic, and that all goes back to the only 2 Widow Mines that Maru had. It's so hard to deal with 30 Zealots storming into your army when you only have 2 Widow Mines. Maru lives but loses 17 SCVs and honestly loses the majority of his army, and that's a big problem because he was already down economically and now he's even further down economically.
10 warp gates and 2 robos, just going to be replenishing the army of Classic that he just lost. Double Colossus production. He's catching up in those upgrades a little bit with +2 weapons on the way and even getting an air upgrade. And then meanwhile, like you were saying, Maru is going to be replenishing off of what was basically 2 bases, and now he establishes a 3rd. This is him finally starting to mine from his 3rd, guys.
Yeah, and it's not even a real 3-base economy because he doesn't have enough SCVs to properly saturate all 3 bases. I mean, the main, sure, that's a bit dried up. And I guess with the amount of mules that he spammed in the natural, that one is going to dry up as well. But yeah, 2 half bases, okay, you're still basically a 2-base Terran. Maru is going to do whatever the hell he can, but it feels like an unfair fight. The only thing that's really keeping him in it were those upgrades you mentioned, but Maru too broke to start +3 attack and +3 armor. So Classic has now caught up in those upgrades, is going up to 5 bases, and don't forget that he's got that very rich Vespian Geyser as well.
Oh, absolutely. Maru gonna need the EMPs of his life. He's gonna have maybe 5 ghosts if there is another engagement coming on up here from Classic. But those EMPs, they really have to get a lot done. Because like you were even saying, even the Widow Mine count is still not really that high. Actually, you know, the 7,
that's better than 2.
Things. Yeah, it's better than before.
Yeah. I mean, this was very smart what Classic was doing earlier, where sometimes I don't like the very Zealot-heavy armies, but against the setup that Maru had, it made perfect sense to show up with a butt ton of Zealots. And we're going to do it once more. The Archons are a little bit clumped up. I think that's where the EMPs should go. That's where a couple of the EMPs connected. But even if Maru somehow finds a way to hold here, he has lost too many SCVs, but he won't hold. GG, just like that. It is Classic who turns things around and gets the W over Maru, and that means he gets seeded a little bit deeper into that knockout